has this mission statement helped you make decisions in the field?
What is the overarching goal? What's the end state that we're trying to achieve? What is the purpose of what we're doing?
What happens if at the top of that ladder, the mission and the vision of where you're trying to go is not aligned? What happens then?
Who are people going to come see the second that plan runs into an issue?
What's the most important thing to achieve the overall success of our organization?
The only thing that was missing was the...
Topic for today is the ladder of alignment. This is a tool that we use to help people understand where they are aligned so that they can find some common ground when there's friction. So what is the ladder of alignment?
People get very confused by this topic. Like, what is the ladder of alignment? What does that mean? And the first time I heard Jocko say that, I kind of felt the same way. I'm like, I wasn't sure exactly what he was talking about. But once he explained it, it was pretty easy, right? If you want to do something, and I want to do something different, and Sean wants to do something totally different from that. If we climb the ladder of alignment, and what we mean by that is the rungs on the strategic ladder that you go up a little bit higher at a little bit higher altitude in the bigger strategic picture. What do we all want? What's the goal we're trying to achieve? And the ultimate goal is that we want the team to be successful. We want to go out and accomplish our mission. And if we want those things, then all we have to do is climb up that ladder of alignment. If Jamie wants to do something totally different, if you want to do something totally different from me, and Sean wants to do something completely different from you, and I see things, completely different from both of you guys, all I really have to do is think, okay, what do you want? You guys want the same thing I want. And so that makes it much easier for us to find alignment and to go in the direction that we need to. And a lot of the problems that we see in teams, they're really not that significant, right? You're like, no, I want to do it this way, and my way's better. And people are arguing over these little semantics of how to get there. But the reality is all it takes is putting your ego in check, putting your emotions in check and realizing, hey, Jamie sees it differently than me. Let me understand her plan. Talk me through how that might work. You might actually have a way better plan than me. It doesn't make me look weak to do that. It actually makes me look strong and confident as a leader to listen to your perspective and go with your plan. And same thing for Sean, just say, okay, he sees it differently. Let's understand where he's coming from. Maybe I can find some common ground where we can marry your two plans together and go with those plans and see if that works. And that's actually what good leadership looks like. That's the black belt move in leadership, is not to insist that we go with my plan, but it's actually to say, hey, how do we go with your plan? And as long as we're all going to the same strategic goal, that's what matters. And that's what the ladder of alignment is climbing that rung up the strategic ladder so that we can be aligned on the overarching goal we're trying to achieve.
And the big piece there is what you just said, Lev, is what's at the top of that ladder, which is the overarching strategic goal. And if that's not what's on top of the ladder, if we're not in agreement of that, that's when there's a lot of conflict that can come in. But we should be aligned on what the overarching goal is. And one of the issues that I've seen the need for the ladder of alignment the most with these different organizations and companies we work with is around this topic of competing priorities, which in reality, if you're both moving towards the same objective, there really shouldn't be competing priorities. Now, I might run one business unit and you might run another business unit, and we might each have our priorities inside of that unit. But if we're both of our priorities are the objective is to accomplish the mission to help the organization be successful, then they can't be competing priorities. But when we're not aligned, when we're not climbing that ladder of alignment, if you're running a department and I'm running a department, and every organization has limited resources, and we both need those resources for our priorities, if we're not keeping the focus on the mission, that's where the conflict can come in. But the second that we put the focus on the overall objective, and then we start working up that ladder of alignment, what we start to see is that our priorities aren't actually in competition. They're both supporting the strategic objective. And if I'm a good teammate, when we climb that ladder of alignment, if I start to see that actually your priority is going to have a bigger impact on the overall success of the organization, then I have to be willing to step back, to put my ego in check and say, hey, we're going to go with what you got right now. You need those resources more than I do.
When we think about the ladder, at the top of that ladder is our mission, visions, values. As we get further down the ladder, there's strategy, there's priorities, there's the goal, there's metrics. And then that bottom rung is the tactics. And that is where people get stuck. They get stuck on the tactics, how you want to do something versus how I want to do something. The best example that I have used to describe the ladder of alignment is something that I call the dishwasher debate, because there are two different people in the world. There are the people that like things in the dishwasher organized in a very specific manner, with the plates facing the same way and the cups in a certain position and the utensils facing up and so forth. And they rinse them really well. They put them in the dishwasher, good to go. Then the other type of person is the type of person that kind of just throws them in there, probably doesn't rinse them, puts them facing different directions. It's kind of haphazard. And I'm convinced that those two people marry each other. And they spend a good part of their marriage arguing over something so silly, the tactics of how we do the dishes. And yet, if we climb the ladder of alignment, what is the goal? A couple rungs up, we've got the goal, which is the dishes are clean. And if you climb even further, what's the goal within our marriage? That we're a team, that we're a partnership, that we create a loving and supportive environment for our kids and our family. And usually we're aligned on that piece of it. And where we get stuck is on that bottom rung, arguing over the tactics. And so the question that a lot of people ask is like, well, who's right? And listen, I am the organized one in our household, and I love to put that, I love to put the stake in the ground that like, I'm right. But the reality is if that's my way of doing it, what does it take for me when my kids or my husband are the other type of person, put those things in the dishes knowing, hey, they're going to get clean. Maybe not as clean as they get when I do them, or maybe not as many get clean because they're throwing them in there haphazardly. But what does it actually take if the goal, and we can align on the goal of the dishes need to get clean? What does it take for me to set aside my ego and get dug in on my plan and the way of doing it, as opposed to, just letting it go a little bit, realizing that the relationship here is far more important than arguing over the tactic. And on the other side, how I counsel people like my husband who throw stuff in there is I might tell them, hey, what would it take for you to take a couple minutes and observe how your partner does the dishes, knowing that it matters to them? And then instead of doing it out of obligation or frustration, you do it out of respect because you're aligned on the goal. We want this to be a partnership, and we're aligned that we want to get the dishes clean. And now we don't have to sit on that bottom rung and stay there arguing over the tactic. We can climb the ladder and figure out we are in fact aligned. So let's work our way back down to create that alignment further down the ladder.
Yeah, we've got a similar experience in our household too. And with 5 kids at home that can never just reuse a plate or a dish for anything, we have a tremendous amount, copious quantities of dirty dishes all the time. And my first reaction with the whole dishwasher debate, which is hilarious because we've had the same in our household as well, was, hey, why do we care? Dishes go in, doesn't matter what order they're in, they come out clean or clean-ish. We put them away, we reuse them again, not a big deal. So in trying to climb that ladder of alignment with my wife, one of the things that I had to keep in mind was to be able to see things from her perspective and not just say, well, why do we care about this? Well, let's try to find out from my wife why it's such a big deal that things are put in an orderly fashion. So we start climbing that ladder. I start asking the questions. I'm trying to see it from her perspective. And what she tells me is, we have a lot of dishes that pile up, and the dishwasher cannot hold all of them in one cycle. So if they're disorganized, then what happens is the kids go to school in the morning and she's left there with a dishwasher that's full and running, and then a whole bunch more dishes stacked up in the sink that she then has to clean by hand. Well, now that I understand more about why she cares so much about the dishwasher being stacked in an orderly fashion, I'm 100% on board with that, because I don't want my wife to be stuck at home when the kids are at school feeling like she has to tidy up by hand a bunch of dirty dishes and pots and pans. So being able to see it from her perspective and not just staying entrenched in my, well, why do I care? Because I don't really care about the dishwasher. But seeing it from her perspective and understanding the bigger picture for why it matters to her, I'm 100% on board with that. I apologize, honey, that I still probably don't get it right all the time, but I'm 100% on board with that now.
But think about how often how much time we waste, especially in relationships where we care about these people the most, but certainly in our teams or in our businesses. We spend so much time arguing over the different ways we could do stuff. And in reality, we don't know if any of them is the exact way that we need to be doing something. So why are we wasting so much time and leadership capital with one another to put all this effort into putting that stake in the ground, digging into our way is better?
The reason is ego. Right? Ego is the reason that we do that because, I want to feel like I'm right. I think I know better. And just as you said, like no one has all the answers, right? No one can see the future. So it's just a guess about, what plan might actually work best in the first place. And so it's very rare that you should have to drive a stake in the ground and say, no, this is the best way to do that. And even then, if you come up with a plan that is, I don't think it's quite as efficient as the way that I think we should do it, the better way, the better way to get you on board with the most efficient way to do it is probably to allow you to try your plan and to recognize that there's some inefficiencies there. And then once you recognize that, then you can make some adjustments. So instead of just insisting that, no, we do it this way, from the get-go. And I think that's just human nature, that we think we know better. Our ego kind of drives those decisions. And I think the real black belt move in leadership is to say, okay, you disagree. You have a different way of doing things. You want to go with a different plan or different method. Talk me through how that would work. And Jocko always did that with me. When we were working together in Tasking and Bruiser, he had way more experience than me in the SEAL teams. I was on my second, platoon, and he'd been a enlisted SEAL prior to being commissioned as an officer, and had multiple deployments under his belt. I think he'd been in the SEAL teams for 15 years at that point. I've been in the SEAL teams for 2. So but when I approached him and said, hey, you know what? I want to try this. I want to do this tactic, or I want to, here's a way I want to execute this that was different from how he saw it. He wouldn't say, shut up, you don't know what's going on. I got way more experience than you. He said, interesting, talk me through how that would work. And so anytime that that's how you could climb the ladder of alignment, is understanding where, people come from, and seeing their perspectives. When someone disagrees with me, when someone thinks that they have a better way of doing things, instead of saying, shut up, I know better than you, I have more experience than you don't know what you're talking about, which is all ego. That's all ego leading you to do that, which is the most destructive thing possible, right? The black belt move is to simply say, okay, what do they know that I don't know? And this is why humility is the most important quality in a leader. And I think when you recognize that, that will allow you to climb the ladder of alignment. And I can't tell you how many conversations that I've had. I know you both have all the time with the clients that we work with. We have the conversation within Echelon Front as well. Our consulting business, where I've got 2 people that see things differently, and they're both calling me and telling me like, hey, I want to do this, but this other person wants to do that instead. And I have to remind them, hey, what does that other person want? The other person wants to be successful. They want to win. They want to deliver the best possible leadership training to our clients. They want to help them solve problems through leadership. That's what they want. So if they've got a little bit different way of wanting to do things, let's hear them out. Let's see what they have to say. Let's climb the ladder of alignment.
One of the things that I think gets missed on a lot of leaders when it comes to ego is one of the things that your ego does for you, in addition to all the other things, is it just creates a whole lot more work for you. Because if everything has to be my plan, that takes my time, that takes my energy. So anytime my ego is getting involved and I'm shutting down, one of my kids' plans for what they want to do on the farm, or one of, subordinates' plans when I was in the military, or when I was running the construction company, if I'm shutting someone else's plans down and it has to be my way, I'm creating more work for myself, because now I have to come up with the plan. I'm probably going to have to supervise things. We know for a fact what's going to happen the second that plan runs into a little bit of an issue. Who are my people going to come see? The second that plan runs into an issue, they're going to come see me, which takes up more of my time and more of my energy. And now I'm not focusing on the things that I really should be focusing on, which are my roles and responsibilities, all because I'm letting my ego dictate my actions.
Yeah, we've talked about the value of climbing the ladder. Hey, we're stuck on the bottom rung. We're arguing over tactics. So let's climb that ladder. We're going to look now at, hey, what are the metrics? What's the goal? What's the priority, the strategy, the mission, the vision, the values, all those things at the top of that. But what happens if you get to the top and there isn't alignment there? What happens if at the top of that ladder, the mission and the vision of where you're trying to go is not aligned? What happens then?
You can't be successful, I think, if you don't have alignment there. I think you have to find alignment. If you and I are trying to go to 2 different places, we're not going to be able to actually support each other. We're not going to be able to work together, and that's a major problem. And so I think we have to really sit down and have a discussion about, okay, what is the goal that we should be trying to achieve? Because if we're trying to achieve two different goals, we have two different, strategic. If there's misalignment in the direction that we're trying to go, that's going to be a problem. One of the examples that we use all the time at Echelon Front is it's like driving directions. If we're going to leave here and we're all going to go to lunch and we're going to go to a restaurant, it doesn't matter if you use Waze and I use Google Maps and you use Apple Maps and
which is clearly the best.
So we all think we have the
matters,
best way, or let's just say like, hey, I'm local, I live here, so I know what the best way is. And so we might take a slightly different route to get to where we want to go, and the common theme, right, is like if we're following each other in the car and, Jamie takes a left when I'm going to go straight, I'm like, what is she doing? She doesn't know where she's going. And, she's following the wrong app and I'm going to get there first. But the reality is that actually no one really knows who's going to get there first, because what if I encounter a wreck? What if I encounter some road construction? Now, obviously these apps like, Waze and Google and Apple Maps can update on those things, but they can't do it in real time. They can't do it in like, hey, a wreck just happened right in front of me and now the whole road shut down and I can't get there. And someone took some roundabout rate. They actually get there before I do. So none of us knows the future, as we said before. And it really doesn't matter if you take a little bit different route and maybe you get there 2 minutes later than me. Who cares, right? Maybe you get there 1 minute before me. Who cares? It really doesn't matter as long as we're going to the same place. But if we're going to different places, that's where it becomes a big problem. And so I think that's where we really have to sit down and say, okay, what is the goal? This is why with decentralized command, we have to understand what is the overarching goal? What's the end state that we're trying to achieve, right? What is the purpose of what we're doing? And if that is different in each of our minds, that's a problem. And that's why that has to be crystal clear for all of us. And I think climbing the ladder of alignment definitely requires that everyone have that same overarching goal at the top of the ladder.
And it's one of the reasons why it's so important for everyone at the organization to understand what the mission is. Everyone on the team has to understand what the mission is. And I've had this experience dozens of times working with these really successful companies. And I'll ask everyone in the room, let's say it's an executive team and there's 15 executives. And I'll ask the executive team to write down the mission of the organization. And in that room of 15 top level executives, I'll probably get 10 different versions of the mission. And there might be a little bit of crossover there, but a lot of times they're not in alignment whatsoever. Now imagine the executive team's not in alignment on what the mission is. How much worse does that get the further down you go in the organization? So understanding that you can't take that for granted, that everybody truly does understand what the overall objective is. When you break people up into departments, they tend to view their department as the only thing that really matters. And each department has an objective, but that objective is supportive to the overall mission. So one of the exercises that I like to do with these different companies is I'll get everyone in a room and then I'll have them organized by department. And then I'll say, write down your 5 biggest priorities right now as a department. And then each department has their 5 biggest priorities. And then I tell them, okay, well, let's in the room with all these different departments, let's figure out which one of these is the most important. And they can't agree on what is the most important. Then what I do is I tell them, okay, everyone, let's review what the mission of the organization is. And we put the mission statement up there. We review the mission statement. And then we say, okay, well, now let's try to figure out which one of these priorities from across departments. Let's lay out the top 5 most important priorities from all these departments that are going to help us achieve the mission. And now all of a sudden, what can they magically do? They can get aligned. And I'll see someone from sales look at someone in operations and go, actually, yours is more important to the mission. And the only thing, all the variables were there before. The only thing that was missing was the alignment on the overall objective.
Everybody's got an agenda, and agenda is a real negative term. But the reality is, if you're a leader and or you're just part of a team, like you got an agenda for that team. You want that team to be successful. You want that team to win. You want to get as many resources as you can, for your particular, small team within the greater organization. And so that's an agenda. That's not a bad thing. And I think we have to kind of let some of that go. Like, Oh, you're in charge of a team. Of course, you're going to have an agenda for that team. You want that team to win. You want that team to get the accolades. Jamie's got her team. She wants that team to win. She wants that team to get the accolades, to get the resources, to have influence on the organization. And so I think it just simply takes finding that alignment, and that's a great exercise because that's really you're forcing them to detach and think about the bigger picture, and that is not in our nature, right? We want to focus on our team, on the immediate priorities, on the challenges that we have in front of us, on the KPIs and metrics that we're trying to track on. And so when you make people step back and think about the broader organization, it's really important to do that. I think one of the most important tools you have as a leader is don't care. And that is something that might sound strange to you. The first time I heard Jocko talk about this, it sounded strange to me, but he wrote a section about this in Leadership Strategy and Tactics, in that it's, if I can take my ego out of it, I don't actually care. I don't care. Well, let's go with your plan. I don't, we're competing for resource among the team. You know what? Let me give you the resources. Let me take a step back and think, okay, that team should be the priority. I'm happy to support that team. I want the team to win, and I want the overall organization to win, to achieve our greater strategic mission. And when the team wins, everybody wins. So it doesn't matter if I'm the lead effort or I'm the supporting effort. I just want to do whatever I can to support it so that we all can win. And when you don't care, I don't mean don't care like you don't care, you don't show up to work, it doesn't really matter, you're mailing it in. I mean, I don't care about how we get to where we need to go. What I care about is winning. And so that's really what good leadership looks like is oh, you want to do it a little bit differently than me? Cool, don't care, let's go with your plan. Hey, you need the resources, and you think it's more important, for your team to have those resources than mine. Great, I don't care. Let's go with that. Let me support you. I'm going to be a team player that puts the team and the mission first. And I think that is a great tool that we have as leaders, and it requires checking your ego.
And I think that works when, to Sean's point, there is alignment around the mission, and that the mission is so simple, everyone understands what that means. And I think that's where businesses get tripped up, because they have these, 3 or 4 paragraph mission statements, or complicated, even if it's just a couple sentences, it's complicated. And it's not broken down in a way that everyone can feel like they're aligned on the mission. And we've talked about this in another episode, but that was one effort we did at Echelon Front. How can we get everyone aligned around our mission? And there is a much broader outline of what that mission is, but we've simplified that to impact, reach, and growth. And we knew that if we could cut it down into 3 words that everyone could understand, they could make decisions within their scope of responsibility aligned to that mission, which is we're going to impact the people that we serve. We're going to then reach more people. And then if we do those things right, we're going to be able to grow as a company. And if everyone is aligned around that mission statement, then when we get to a point where we have to make a decision, or there's again, friction, we can pull to that. Hey, how is this going to drive impact? How is this going to help us reach more people? What is this doing to help us grow as a company? And we can align around that mission statement, and that idea of don't care and some of the other things that we implement to climb that ladder work if there is a simple mission at the top of that ladder that everyone can be rallied behind.
It's a great point. And, the goal of the mission is to empower action at the ground level. It's not, as a leader, I come up with this really awesome sounding mission statement so that I can impress everybody with how articulate and smart I am. It should be able to drive action at the ground level. People should be able to use that mission statement to help them make decisions real time when they're encountering problems. And I've got to work with, for the past 6 months, this awesome heating and AC company out of North Carolina. And they've been in the process of refining this mission over the course of that 6 months. And the last time I was with them, they rolled out their new mission statement. And I was talking to some of their ground level employees that are dealing with the friction of problems in people's homes, on the job site, trying to get things done. And I just asked them, hey, has this mission statement helped you make decisions in the field? And all of them were like, yes, absolutely it has. Because I now know what success looks like for the organization. Success for the organization doesn't necessarily look like, and in fact, most times it's not for them specifically, saving as much money as we possibly can on the job site, which was some of their mentalities before, or getting off of that job site as quick as I can and getting to someone else. Now that they know what the overall mission is, they know that mission success might mean spending more time on that job site, developing a relationship with that customer that they're servicing their AC or heating unit, so that when that person's neighbor, when their unit goes out and they need someone, the only person that they would think to recommend would be this particular company. So that mission statement has driven action on the ground level, and that's what a good mission statement does: simple, clear, and concise.
That's a super important thing to do, no question about it. But what happens when there isn't a simple, clear, concise mission statement? And we see this all the time, where leaders are saying of like a team, within the organization, we have some frontline individual contributors or frontline leaders or mid-level managers, and like someone needs to come explain what the mission is. And one thing that I often use to illustrate that to them is to talk about the Battle of Ramadi in 2006 when we were there with Tasking and Bruiser. And I say, how often do you think the generals came from Baghdad to tell us exactly what we needed to do to turn this horrible, violent, terrible situation around in Ramadi? Like, who do you think came out from the Pentagon to give us like a direct guidance in what needed to happen? And the answer is that never happened. It never happened. So the troops on the ground there, right, the colonel who was in charge of the brigade combat team and his staff and the battalion commanders and the company commanders and all the way down the line had to look at the problem and say, okay, what do we need to do to solve this problem? Here's what we need to do. And so you may not have that simple, clear, concise mission statement from the top. That's actually okay. If you detach, if you put your emotions and your ego in check, and you just say, what are we actually trying to do here? What can I do? What can my team do that can help the overall company be successful? You could come up with your own mission statement for you and your team, and you can drive huge impact as a result of that. So it's not that hard to do. You don't need some senior executive to come sit down and give you a PowerPoint presentation. You can sit there and just take a step back and understand, okay, what are we trying to do here? What's the most important thing to achieve the overall success of our organization? That's what I can do. And you can do that for yourself, and you can do that for the people around you so that you can be successful.
So when you're stuck on the bottom rung, you create alignment by climbing the ladder. And somewhere along that effort, you will find alignment, which then allows you to climb back down and fix the alignment. Find and where we can have some common ground, we can compromise. And so the immediate action drill for this week is to be aware of that this week as you're going in and having conversations with people. Where am I disagreeing? Where is there friction points? And if there's friction points there, climb the ladder of alignment. Ask yourself, are we aligned? And if the answer is yes, let that guide your next move.
Very specifically on the tactics of this, right, is when someone disagrees with you, because they're going to, right? We're human beings and we interact with other human beings. When someone disagrees with you, instead of just saying, you don't know what you're talking about or immediately getting defensive, open your mind and ask them for their perspective. See the world through their eyes. Use that don't care principle of like, oh, look, maybe they have a better plan. Let's go with their plan. And look for the opportunities to do that. When you put your ego in check and you put the team and the mission first, that's going to enable you to climb that ladder of alignment so that you and your team can lead and win.
Find us on YouTube or wherever you like to listen to podcasts and do all the things you're supposed to do. Like, subscribe, share, leave us a review, but most importantly, send us the leadership challenges that you're facing right now so we can target our next episodes to helping you understand how to apply the principles of extreme ownership to solving those challenges.
Check out our free resources at echelonfront.com, or you can take the next step and join the Extreme Ownership Academy, our online training platform, where we go deeper on these principles and teach you how to apply them in your business and in your life.